right, well, welcome. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting. It's Monday, March 3rd. We'll call the meeting to order. Our first order of business is to welcome new folks. We do have a new member from the Conservation Commission, Diane Jones, but she is apparently not here yet. Hopefully she'll join us soon. And there are two new staff members. I don't know, Emma and Griffin, if you'd like to say hello, or?
Yeah, so I'll give a brief introduction. So Emma O'Connor's the new part-time administrative assistant for CPC, so she'll be working directly with you guys on projects, the administrative tasks. Obviously, our office, I think we kind of discussed it earlier, our office will stay on as some professional support, but she'll be doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff. She's on the planning email, so communication and all that remains the same, but you'll start seeing emails from her and coordinating, and you saw that in the lead up to this meeting, sending some of the materials. So we're going through that process with her, and it's going very well. And then Griffin O'Neill is our new assistant planner, full-time in the office. So I'm bringing him around to all the night meetings that we go to. He's got to sit in front of all of the boards and committees that we staff and say hello. So he's here tonight. He'll be working on a lot of our planning-related activities. So just giving introduction to the new staff that we've brought on and giving a little FaceTime in front of the cameras. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. We're happy to have you.
Welcome.
I suppose we could tell you who we are. Probably that would be a polite thing to do. Emma, I've already met you, but I'm Deborah Mooney. I'm an at-large member and currently the chair. Carl, if you want to go next.
Carl Nelson. I'm here as a representative of the Parks and Cemetery Commission.
Jason Molina, at large, also and vice chair. Thanks.
I'm Melanie McGee. I'm an at-large member as well.
Gail Aslanian, representing the Historical Commission.
I'm John Sigilnik. I'm an at-large member also.
And I'm Kathy McSweeney, Amers in the Housing Authority.
So another time, you'll get to meet our Conservation Commission representative and our Planning Board representative. Welcome. So the next on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes from our February meeting. Did everyone have a chance to review them? Are there any comments, questions, or corrections?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
No.
Yes.
No, I have a comment.
All
I'd like to make an amendment to the minutes.
Yes.
right. Okay.
I don't know if you want to, I mean, they're small enough that I think we can manage, see if we'll go along. Melanie, do you have the minutes from last meeting?
I
Available
don't
to you?
have them with me.
Here's one.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay.
Can I write on it?
Yep. It's
Okay,
yours.
go ahead.
Okay. First point was the meeting was called to order at 7:05, and I wanted to note that I chaired on behalf of our chair.
Okay.
So Jason chaired this meeting on behalf of Deborah.
Okay.
Okay, next edit recommended is number 2. It says the minutes were approved unanimously with one abstention. I wanted to note there was the December 2024 minutes, because we didn't have a January meeting that was canceled. So just for clarity, the December 2024 minutes.
Right.
Okay. Next is on 5A. The second to last sentence says, the committee then voted unanimously to fund this project. This is relative to the ledger records restoration. What I'd like to do is strike the word fund and instead say recommend, because we do not
Right.
fund projects,
You
we
are.
recommend them, right? And then continue on that sentence to say, so this project, and then here's a new text for that, for the town meeting, for the annual town meeting. So it'll now read, the committee then voted unanimously to recommend this project for the annual town meeting.
Okay.
And last, 5D, as in David, last sentence. It says, after some discussion, the vote was postponed until next meeting when there will be a more community input. I'd like to add after the word vote to clarify.
Wait a minute, let me see. This goes on to the next page, huh?
Yep, so it's the last sentence just before section 6.
All right,
You see that?
yes.
Okay. So it currently says, after some discussion, the vote, then insert insert there, on whether to recommend this project. Just to clarify what was postponed. So it now reads, after some discussion, the vote on whether to recommend this project was postponed until our next meeting.
Okay.
Dot, dot, dot.
Okay. Fine.
Okay.
No problem at all.
Members, any questions or comments relative to my recommended amendment?
Nope.
No, I don't think there are any problems.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So
Oh.
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved.
Thank you.
Next is to review and sign bills. We have a bill, Mr. McGoldrick. How did
We
that
do,
happen?
we do have a bill, a rare occurrence, but one nonetheless. So this evening, we do have the community advocate invoice for $579.15 relating to the posting of the legal notices for this evening's public hearings.
Are there any questions for Chris about this invoice or any discussion? Is there a motion to approve payment of the bill?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All opposed? And we'll pay our bill. And next is our staff report.
Thank you. So I uploaded the department report for this month, I should say the prior month. Of note, I just wanted to draw your attention to the grant section, which I think is of most use to this committee. I'm not going to spend time on the Jordan Pond Trail, as we'll discuss that this evening, but included in that is the master plan update. So at the end of that memo is kind of a list of the grants that we're currently pursuing or anticipate pursuing application for. We're in full swing with grant writing and related to the annual budget as we prepare that, look for the typical 20% local match that's needed. A lot of those are matched by in-kind staff hours, which will be provided by our office or related staff. But there are some other commitments that we'll be applying for town meeting as well. The master plan update is important. We're applying for that for FY26. We'll be looking for a community one-stop grant to fund that portion of the project. What that will do is we will look at a 10-year time frame of the community. Our previous master plan was passed in 2016, so we're coming up to the end of that kind of useful life of that plan and the data that it was based on, so we'll be looking to update that. This committee was not yet formed, so we don't have any implementation steps, but I've been going around to each of the groups as we start looking at that process of finalizing the implementation steps of the prior year's master plan, and just make sure we're set up to really hit the ground running with that effort. That will typically take a year-long process with very robust community engagement. We'll be having a lot of public forums, discussing everything around the community in terms of long-range planning and creating the community that we want to see in 10 years. And then using that 2016, the current master plan, doing kind of a health check of where we set the target 10 years ago and where did we land in that 10-year time frame. So it'll be a two-part process with that. It's a major undertaking. Really excited to be able to do that. I've been on either end of it, never done the actual full master plan process. I've found funding for it in another community and came on board here in 2016, right after we finished our first master plan. So I was a part of the implementation process when it kicked off. So interesting now to be able to go through the full process. Really excited for it, so.
Thank you. Any questions for Chris? Or
Yeah.
right ahead.
So, yeah, definitely. Likewise, I think it's pretty exciting to see this come around again. I remember participating in the first time, and also as a CPC member, using the master plan as an ingredient to our community preservation plan. One of the things that it would be nice to have, which in thinking the master plan, I know it's getting into the weeds of it, but I recall that in the master plan, there's that appendix talked about individual items that came out of it, and then recommendations about who does that next. Like, is it recommended for the select board? Is it recommended for planning board, et cetera, et cetera? I'd like to see if the CPC is listed on there as well, like, recommend for CPC funding, or for CPC to look at that area of improvement.
Yeah, that was for the implementation plan, they looked at, responsible parties and things like that, and they would name a number of departments or other boards and committees that would be involved in each of their goals and the related policy efforts is how they broke it down. There's been some other models for implementation to kind of consolidate those efforts that's a little bit more manageable. There's, our current process is kind of a laundry list, and during that implementation would sometimes get a little bit clunky, so it may not look the same. I think that'll be a good part of the discussion of how we want to frame that, and maybe it's both. I think there is a usefulness to the laundry list style, but maybe there's some certain call-outs of priority items that get like a one-pager, a little bit more attention, and have a local champion that's identified to really drive the effort. Yep. But
Excellent.
definitely excited to have those conversations. Yep.
Anything else? Thank you, Chris. The next item on our agenda is to open up the floor for public hearing on 4 of the projects and 4 is yes.
So, point of order,
Yes.
relative before you mention the first one, the ledger record restoration. In our last meeting, we voted to be eligible and recommended that project move forward to town meeting. So I think I believe it's a clerical error to be on this list, this agenda. Ledger record restoration.
If we're open to any comment, only because I don't think we had a public hearing on it prior.
Okay.
So if there's any additional public comment, we could revisit the vote if something earth-shattering were to change our
Okay.
minds about that.
Sure.
Yes, Carl?
It's just a kind of I don't know. I guess I'm just going to say it. I would like these public meeting hearings or even these, when we review things, I would like them to be in date order from when they were originally submitted. I'm not sure I understand what makes ledger restoration happen first before Arrowwood. And it doesn't necessarily matter, but it might someday. Okay?
Good point. I suspect Mr. McGoldrick put that there because he thought there'd be the least said
No,
about
no,
it.
no,
Get it checked off and done.
I'm just looking for in the future.
Makes perfect sense. Well, at that point, is there anyone who wishes to speak to the ledger restoration
Point
project?
of order. Don't we have to vote to open the meeting to a public hearing?
I don't know. It's an agenda item. Do we need to vote for it?
It's an agenda.
No, it's just voting to close the public hearing. You can, notice was posted, so we're obligated to open the public hearing.
So, is there anyone who wishes to speak about the ledger restoration project? That's just fine. Next one is the Arrowwood Playground, and even with my glasses for reading, I can see that Mrs. McCann is here. So, if there's anything new you'd like to tell us, please do not feel like you have to repeat you or Mr. Esposito, your entire presentation. You have been here before, but we'd love to hear from you before we make a final determination. You're up if there's anything that anyone would like to say about the Arrowwood Playground project. Mr. Esposito, the floor is yours.
No, I just wanted to add that we did a public outreach last week. We had about 30 attendants. Some were in person, some were virtual. And we also resubmitted a lot of letters. Emma can tell you that. We have at least 63. I'm thinking maybe a little more than that. Some of them were a couple years ago when this all started, and we had a couple more that came in this week, all in support. And that's really all I have.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Esposito or Mrs. McCann about the project, or anything new you learned? And thank you for having your hearing and getting all that feedback and sending all of these letters of support. Is there any? Yes.
I'd just like to comment that I did attend virtually the meeting, and it was enlightening to me. I know that a lot of the material we had gone over here, but I think in that setting it was a little bit easier, or maybe because I've heard it before, that it sunk in much more. And I'm much more comfortable with the project going forward, except for the fact that I'm still uncomfortable with how we're going to pay for it. And I was hoping that we were going to discuss budget before we dealt with the actual recommendations. So I don't know, that it would set my mind at ease if I knew where the money was coming from, how it was going to be funded, and if we could afford it or not.
Yeah, so these items are still on the agenda later. This is the public hearing process. At the end of this, I'll ask the committee to close the public hearings on each of these, but we do still have on the agenda the eligibility and funding applications for our
Okay,
final.
so we don't have to.
No,
we don't
right
have to
now we
make a
just want to hear from
recommendation
the
till after
folks that have
Okay,
come to
that's fine.
visit us.
Well, if it helps, I just gave $90,000 back today from the Dean Park basketball courts, so you'll be
Thank
getting that back.
That almost pays for what, the pour-in-place rubber coating, right?
It'll help.
I just also want to add that my neighbor and I, Ashley Philandes, we put together another public reach out to have people sign and give their emails. And right now, currently, we have 146 signatures from our community of our support.
Thank you for doing that.
Yep. And if you'd like that, I'd be happy to share that with you.
Yes, Kath.
Just a question about that. I looked through the list, and I don't think they're just from your neighborhood. That's a town-wide.
It's town, yes.
Supporters.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for either of us?
I have a
Yes.
comment. I'm wondering what the process is of building a park like that in a neighborhood at the outset, and then not supporting it down the road or struggling to find funds. So I'm like, you've got a park, kids are driving by it, how sad is it? There's no swings on the swing. It just doesn't make any sense. So from aesthetic point of view and from the impact that it has emotionally on kids in the neighborhood, it's kind of sad. So I'm hoping that you'll figure out a way to, find something to do with this lovely little area that's in a nice little community. So that's
As part of the CPC project, we do ask how projects that we might help create, how they will be maintained. 'Cause CPC funds cannot be used for maintenance going forward. They can create or preserve or restore.
Preserve.
But they can't be used for regular maintenance. But that's part of the
But my
application that's
understanding is
submitted.
that the town came and took down the swings. What part of restoring is that? That's my.
It's my understanding that was all that at the time there was funding for, and they were unsafe. Please correct me if I'm
Well,
wrong,
it didn't-
Heather, that
it didn't
some of these
cost
small
us.
parks were created as, when those neighborhoods were developed, a different time and a different mindset, that literally, I think the town just asked the developers, if you want to build all those houses, give us a park.
Is that what it was?
But at the time, there was no plan for what happened after.
Was it a requirement? And if so, what's the town's position on making these requirements and then not finding?
I suspect, I wasn't here when they happened, but I
Yeah.
suspect it was a goodwill gesture by some of the developers.
It was a requirement that they give us a piece of open space, but at the time, the requirement was a playground. Later on, when they realized the future maintenance needs, they shifted it to more of just a piece of open space land. So some of our neighborhoods just have the open space, they just don't have the playground part.
We're catching up.
So a little foggy, is what I'm hearing.
It's great.
Good, I'm sorry, you didn't introduce yourself in the beginning.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Jane Carney Senical,
Thank you.
and my granddaughter frequents the neighborhood.
May I add a comment?
Absolutely.
There's a town manager's common ground roundtable on the budget scheduled for later this month, March 11th, 1 to 2 p.m. at the Senior Center, and March 18th from 6 to 7 at the Town Hall in Conference Room A. I'm sure he'd like to hear your feedback on parks being important.
Okay.
And the more he hears, the more money might come into the budget for action, right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions in regards to the Arrowwood Playground proposal? If not, we'll move on to the next one on our agenda. If there's any comments or anything that the public would like to share with us in regards to the Prospect Park accessibility improvements.
Hi, good evening. Brenda Goodwill, representing Friends of Prospect Park. Good to see you. When we last spoke, there were a couple of questions that were posed to us, so I did bring some further information to provide you. You may have been given that prior to this meeting. But we did talk about square footage, total linear feet for the ADA compliant pathways and ramps that we were hoping to install in Prospect Park. Kevin's team, the engineers, did work out those numbers. We are looking at 430 linear feet, which would equate to 3,000 square feet of the aggregate pathways. And there's one ramp going in, which is 65 linear feet. So one ramp and 430 linear feet of trails, aggregate pathways. Any questions on those?
I think, give me 1 second.
Might be a question.
I just recall from the minutes that I did ask about more information about the lifespan of the aggregate paths, but I believe we did.
I do have
discuss-
that.
Yeah.
I do have that, and I can speak
Okay.
on that as well. One of the gentlemen that's not here today, he had brought up why we weren't using cement, asphalt. So I did prepare a document. I did provide that to you. Mainly, the reasons why we chose the stabilized aggregate. Number one, aesthetics. This is a historic park. We don't want to plaster it with cement and concrete. We want it to be as natural looking as possible. So the aggregate does allow it to still look in a more naturalized state. Cost effectiveness. The cost is considerably less for the crushed aggregate, as well as the ease of installation, saving quite a bit of money. Crushed aggregate is something that's used bicycle paths, hiking trails all over Massachusetts, all over the nation. It's one of the top surfaces that they use. The durability, we're looking at an average 10-year lifespan with maintenance. And another reason why we're choosing it as well is the ease of maintenance. It's not a difficult hardscape or semi-hardscape to keep and repair. And if you're maintaining it, you have at least 10 good years. And again, it's not a difficult surface to fix, to maintain, and replace certain sections as you move forward. So those are the main points why we chose it: aesthetics, cost efficiency, easy installed, easy to maintain.
Thank you.
Thank you. John?
What happens after 10 years?
You continue to patch it like you would anything else.
Okay.
If there's a little,
It doesn't require complete replacement.
no. No, it would only be a section here or there.
Any other questions? Anything else you'd like to share with us? Thank you for bringing that information back. We appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Then we'll move on to our next one is Jordan Pond. The request is for a match of funding for Mass Trails application. Anyone like to speak to that or any questions?
I mean, I'm happy to speak to it now or later when we get into the eligibility and funding. I did provide as follow-up for our project. It's at your desk, and I have a digital copy. It's kind of hard to read, but I did confirm that we do own the property around the pond that this project would be in. And each of those have a designation, a land use code that is either playground or conservation, so it's consistent with the, I believe, consistent with that restriction that it has to be protected for that use, but,
You have a question?
Pardon?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
never mind. I'll ask during the eligibility.
Well, if there's no other comment from the public, we thank you so much for being here with us and offering more information and your opinion and support for these projects. Is there a motion to close the public hearing part of this agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing portion of this meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. So now we will move to our action items. We have two items which we are discussing. At first, the eligibility of those projects. We have in our folder the eligibility application for the Prospect Park accessibility improvements.
Point of order on that?
Yes.
So we did vote on that being eligible. It was a rather,
We did vote on that one already?
yep.
See, I believe in- So the Jordan Pond, we did not vote on that because we had questions about the land around the pond.
Correct.
So we can skip A1 and move to A2, the Jordan Pond application. We first determine if this project is eligible for CPC funding. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion about whether or not this is eligible?
Yes.
Jason?
Thank you. Okay, so look at the map. It's hard to tell what where the proposed lines are, the proposed trails are?
let me pull the full map.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, the paper copy did not print the large.
So on the paper form, you have what, different designations for what it's listed as, conservation or playground?
Correct, yeah.
So the blue that is not water is conservation land. The tan is designated for playground.
And what's tax T?
Tax
Pardon me?
title.
What does that mean?
That we own it through a tax title process. So non-payment of taxes, generally.
Non-payment?
Well, I don't know, non-pay, generally, that's one of the tax title ways, but some other, there's a number of methods, but I haven't reviewed in that level of detail of each of those parcels, but I do know we have that information, so, sorry, I'm just sharing the,
So the part that would be concerning to CPC would be CPA funds for the purposes of recreation have to be on dedicated parkland. And that can come through whether the land is already designated as such as recreation. Or if there was or conservation that protects it with approval of the Conservation Commission, going through those sections. Tax title, if any of these paths go over a tax title property, or those, how can CPA monies be protected on those parcels?
Thank
I guess it all depends on whether, if we're crossing any of those tax titles. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's, I was trying to pull up the map, and I'll go through the existing kind of trail area. So this is the existing trail. I don't have this data superimposed over the conceptual schematic design. Certainly throughout the development of this process, if we're successful with the Mass Trails grant, we'll be doing that in much more detail, down to very specific survey level construction design. But you know, in large part, it is intended to follow the existing trail network. So that can be seen by this line. Is my mouse showing up? Yeah, this line here. So this is the parking near, I believe it's the sewer pump station. That would then come in. You know, this one shows the tax title property, but I believe we can shift the entrance if needed to go through this conservation land. Again, this is all existing, so we may not even need to touch that portion anyways.
Right.
But this comes through here. This is that red bridge that, if you've hiked it, you may be familiar with. That then goes. So this then, the designation is still town-owned in these brown parcels. It kind of goes, you know, between that and the riparian zone of the pond itself, but that has a playground designation, which is, you know, parks. This Jordan Road section here is actually a right-of-way, which extends, so that is that first spur trail, which would extend that Jordan Road as a multi-use spur. So this wouldn't be brought up to subdivision standards or any roadway vehicular use, but it would be a multi-use trail that would extend from that trail existing to the end of Jordan Road. Then extends along here, again, along the lake, still in that playground designation for the bulk of it. There's a bit of a change over here where it loops, and then you pick up in this section, you know, what some may be familiar with, some of the ATV trails here, and those portions that the parking is designated to be approximately in this location, but that natural state trail starts to pick up in this area. This is the Jordan Pond Beach kind of location, which we've heard you don't want to swim in, but nonetheless, that's there. That extends along here, and when it gets to where the tax title properties are, those are town-owned tax title properties, but we're primarily, again, entering along with, this is a right-of-way, which is Lakewood Drive. Very hard to call this a drive. It is very much a natural trail state, but that is within the right-of-way, you know, narrowly missing those tax title parcels. So when we get into the construction level design, that is a constraint that we'll be monitoring to make sure that we are within that right-of-way along there and into Lakewood Drive as well. Again, that Lakewood Drive, we're not improving the road. Sorry, this is just something that has come up from public comment, so I just want to be very clear with that again, that we would be just implementing essentially the sidewalk and continuing that along Lakewood Drive for pedestrian-only use.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions about the map or about the proposal?
Not as far as eligibility, no?
Okay. Do you feel ready to determine whether or not this project is eligible? Is there a motion?
I guess, let me ask the reverse question. Do we know of any reason this project should not be eligible?
I think that the concerns that you had about eligibility, I believe Chris just explained
Yeah,
that we're okay.
but there's
And
basically no other reason.
the land is appropriately designated, it's not improving a road. What else?
you had other aspects of it that were larger scope, but because of the monies that were coming in from Mass Trails.
Mass Trails?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are portions that wouldn't be included in this. We certainly would do the design, but, you know, we can certainly keep the money somewhat separate. Would be, I think the ineligible would be that driveway and parking. And actually, that's not included in this original budget. That would be the third phase. So the intent is to develop the trail, the multi-use trail. If that drives, you know, a need for additional parking or additional infrastructure to serve the park, then we would contemplate doing that through a third phase. So the first phase is developing it, either the Worthington Trail or along the remainder of that natural, probably connecting the loop. Second phase would be whichever one of those that we didn't complete, and the third and final phase would be that off of, I think it's Florence Street, would be extended. There is that existing kind of roadway, so that would be improved, and then some parking there as shown in the schematic design. Happy to pull those up if I'm more of a
Wish to see
visual
that
guy, so.
At this point, or do you have enough information to make an eligibility determination?
I'm fine.
Another further question about the water, is like, wasn't there some spill basins or something like that, or was
Yeah, so essentially where some of those tax title parcels are, actually, I'm gonna do this by Google Maps because you can actually see it a little more clearly than some of the others. And you can actually see the impairments that are being created. So let me just go. Oh boy. Not that. So along this Reed Street, so there is a bit of wetlands along here. So this is the some of those tax title parcels that you've seen, that we kind of noted along that Lakewood Drive, goes into Reed Road. Along here is some wetlands that we will be looking at, working with conservation related to stormwater infrastructure to help with the sedimentation that is facilitated from stormwater runoff there. You can actually see in some of the sedimentation that is flowing into the river. This is actually in some of the other aerial views, you actually see a large swath of the sediment right around this location going in. So as that basin fills with water in storm events, it's overtopping the existing trail, which floods the trail, makes it largely unusable and unsafe. And then that sediment that it picks up then goes into the water. It's contributing to some of the phosphorus loading and lower water quality. So that's going to be one of the major improvements that we're looking at, is facilitating that flow of water to capture and treat it in that basin using nature-based solutions and things like that. So we don't have a specific design yet. This would be part of developing that trail network. And then all along, we'll be looking at additional infrastructure, if it's, you know, culverts or other kind of improvements to drainage that we can do to pitch water and storm water either away from the lake or pre-treat it before going in through sedimentation basins and other engineering techniques. And I'm sure the town engineer could explain those in much better detail than I can. But
okay, but at that point, when we get to the construction of those spaces, that's outside of CPA.
correct. So this would just be for we would be using the Mass Trails and CPA funding for the design of the trail, which would include the design of that infrastructure improvements, but the actual construction, when we'll come back for CPA for that match as well, and when we do so, we can look at segregating those funds in that funding framework.
That's good. Thanks.
Yep.
If coming back for the funds, is that the same 80-20 match that the trails would put in 80% to lot 20?
Yeah, I mean, I anticipate we'll be looking at a subsequent Mass Trails grant, which carries an 80-20 match requirement. There are potentially other funding opportunities that we can look at. Most grants are at an 80-20 level, but we'll review that, and I'm not entirely committed to just using mass trails. There's been a lot of outreach from the public on this to really kind of get things done, and so we do want to get the ball rolling. And if we can do multiple grant, if we're successful for multiple grant applications during the construction piece, I'd like to do more quicker if we can, but if we need to spread it out for funding opportunities, we can do that as well, so.
So the $2 million estimate for the project, in effect, with the 80/20 over the whole project, in a sense, the total cost, say, to the CPC or someplace within the town of Shrewsbury would be 400,000?
Correct.
Seems cheap.
Any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Go right ahead.
On the map, it's on Wildwood Road there, the number 51, is that a residential house? It's over right
it
where we were,
is.
right before the, in the tax section, tax
Yeah,
title.
51 here.
It's got a little red 51 on it. That's a
Correct, yeah, it's
residential house.
a private residence, yep.
Does that pose a problem? Not yet,
Um,
right?
I do know that homeowner is aware of our efforts.
Okay.
I won't say that they're fully on board, but we've been continuing to try and engage them, and we'll continue to do so.
They're not here today opposing it.
It's true.
All right. So first, let's determine if this project is eligible for CPC funding. Is there a motion to determine that, yes, it is eligible?
Me?
You look like you were about to ask a question.
No, I'm
I make a motion.
she said, the way she asked the question, how do we determine that it's eligible? We just decide it's eligible.
We decide if it's eligible, or we say, no, it's not eligible, and it ends there.
If it fits the criteria, you know.
Okay.
So we go over this.
need a motion?
This is our guide, right? So eligibility is driven by Chapter 44B
Right.
and all the text. This is a
But I
summarized
guess-
one-page version of it.
If I was gonna
And-
make a motion, I'd just basically say, I would like to make a motion that the Jordan Pond schematics of the Jordan Pond upgrade is eligible for CPC funding.
That would be an appropriate
I
motion.
was trying to figure out how to word the thing.
That would be perfect. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
All
many
in
seconds.
favor of determining that, yes, this project is eligible for CPC funding, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? Abstentions? Then this project is deemed eligible for CPC funding. So now that we've determined that these are eligible, now we need to look at what projects we would recommend for annual town meeting for funding.
funding
And as
applications.
Carl had pointed out earlier, I'd like a motion to perhaps take these out of order and take them in the order in which they were submitted to us.
Thank you. Shall we discuss what monies are available in our budget first?
Yes. First, let's pick the motion to take them in the order in which they were submitted.
Okay.
Is there,
I make a motion that we take the project funding applications in order of when they were originally submitted.
is there a second?
Wait, but there's a, wait. We
Second.
have, ledger has to come off that list because we already recommended it.
Yes.
So.
So that
of
So
the
it might,
three-
it might be in order already then.
All right, then we'll skip it. Yes, before we begin discussing what we recommend funding, Chris, now would be a great time for you to share with us an update on our budget. Just, pretend you're talking to kindergartners. What do we have? What do we have? We have already approved some, so what do we have left in this current budget that we may spend?
Kindergartners. I may want more then, and more than I can have.
I'll go into more detail for that agenda item later, but I will pull up our draft budget for FY '26, showing committed funds So members will be familiar with this. We pass this every year, propose this every year for town meeting to approve our fiscal year budget. We do have to base these on certain assumptions that are refined as we get closer to town meeting, and the actuals are slightly different from what the budget proposes.
Can you zoom in a little bit here,
Yes,
please?
absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. So I just kind of briefly touching on some of those assumptions. I am anticipating in this first budget, I've reduced the state match down to 15%. So CPC members will be familiar that that state match percentage has been decreasing over the last several years. I don't believe that that figure has been published as of yet. So I'm basing that on 15%. It was 18% last year. So again, we're assuming a lower distribution or match amount consistent with that declining figure. Actuals may be higher. But rolling through those in the accounts, I am proposing for the open space and recreation to split the Jordan Pond, their Arrowwood into two buckets, given the amount. But we do have existing, we're projecting 166,646. We then see an open space appropriation of approximately an additional 275,000. Given those two projects, if we funded at 200 to Arrowwood and the 53 for the Jordan Pond, we would still have 22,000. But again, we can refine those as we get a little bit closer, but we do have sufficient funds for that project at that amount as projected. Going into historic preservation, we have the ledger amount, so I'm projecting if we do fund that project, that we'll have a balance of 103,284 at the end of fiscal year 26 with that ledger restoration funded. Scrolling down further is the general budget reserve, so that's the balance of fund accounts. Proposing to have the Prospect Park ADA and the Arrowwood to be funded out of that bucket, which would be the remaining 400,000 if Arrowwood is funded at 600,000, and the Prospect Park ADA was for 150,000. So in that general undesignated reserve would leave a budget remaining of $1,864,000 and $64 as a projected balance at the end of those projects funding. So in short, I do believe that we have funding in all accounts sufficient to fund the projects, all of the projects that are proposed before us this evening.
Are there questions for Chris?
Yes.
Oh,
Go
Yes,
for it.
on the schedule, in terms of the revenue, you still list FY '24 as a budget number. Shouldn't we have the actual by now?
Yeah, I still have to input those, and as part of our final budget, I will have those actuals inputted.
Okay. Now, both the FY '25 and '26 budget, I guess, we basically, from a tax standpoint, from the base, it would assume you were increased by 2.5% a year if everything were equal. Then in addition to that, you have new build, but you go from 820 to 901, which is a 10% increase in revenue. That seems kind of high to me, I guess. If you look at the previous years, it's like 1.5% and then 3.5%, and now you're jumping to almost 10%. Do you think that's a good number, I guess? I guess in the end, if you brought the numbers down for '25 and '26, that would probably reduce it by $100,000 total. I'm just speculating that that's a high number.
Okay.
Based on the percentage increase.
Yeah, I mean, so those budget figures are provided by the assessor, and those are the ones that the budget was based on for these years. So this FY '25 budget was, that was passed at that 901 figure. That was the appropriation amount at the previous town meeting, annual town meeting.
At the previous town?
Correct, May 2025 town meeting appropriated that amount.
The 901 was? Okay. I mean, you should have a good idea. I mean, we should have almost three quarters of receipts by now. So you could tell if you're on track for that. But I just thought I'd throw it out there. It seems high. You know, I mean, we'll still have funds in the thing, but
Does this include Kevin's $90,000?
This does not include any returns from any projects, so this is all just committed funds.
Okay.
So,
Oh, well, the other thing we noticed is that your Prospect Park ADA funding of 150, it's only 143.
yeah.
They have some
Other
outside
funding.
funds they're throwing in there, so.
What other returned funds do we have? Were there any from the original Prospect Park project, since the original proposal went all the way through design, but the original assessment said we couldn't design it because we couldn't build it? Was there any return from that or any other projects besides Dean Park?
So those funds would be returned to the same account,
Right.
which, we draw on the account, so they don't actually get returned, but they would essentially become uncommitted back to the account. So I am working with the assessors, sorry, not the assessors, I'll work with the accountant to collect any of the remaining funds on projects that have either exceeded their 2 years or are no longer, or have been closed out, so we'll have that as well. And I'll add those figures in as we refine this budget closer to town meeting as well.
Thank you. Do you think it's feasible to expect that for our April meeting? Since
I think we can do that, yep.
Awesome. And if you think of more questions, John, would you forward those to Chris prior to the April meeting to make sure he includes everything you're looking for?
Okay. The only other, well, just a comment, I guess, the gravestone restoration, wasn't this supposed to be 200, oh, it's down here. Didn't the bid come in like at $150,000 or something for the gravestone restoration?
Correct, yeah. So again, the budget that we do, this running budget, off of the proposed appropriations from town meeting, we haven't adjusted those for any of the,
No, I know.
savings
We-
realities.
Just so that everybody knows that, again, down the road, there'll probably be another $50,000 or $60,000 coming back from that one also, somewhere down the road.
Is there a way, all right, are you, gotta get my terms down, but what do you think of the idea of adding a tab to this spreadsheet or our budget spreadsheet that lists each project and how it's going and what we've expended on each project? Is that feasible? I know it's feasible. Is it?
So each of the projects and their committed funds are listed on this budget.
Right. I get that, but then I'd like to see a tab within there that lists each project and what has gone on with it and how it's progressing, right? And then to see at the end, like we would have seen, there's a potential for the basketball monies, it's coming in under, the gravestones are coming in under, right? We, kind of a progress report financially, at least as how things are going. Because otherwise we don't really get it, right?
Yeah, so I think we do have some ideas related to that, and I want to touch on those at the agenda item later on this evening.
Okay.
So I'll have some more of that.
Project,
Okay.
the project, the committee,
We've got Emma now, so
Bid.
we're very optimistic.
as the bills come in.
No pressure. What else talking about, is there anything else about the budget, or should we dive into the Arrowwood Playground decision? All right, Arrowwood Playground then. How are we feeling? What other questions might you have for Chris? Do you want to discuss? The budget has changed from the original proposal. We've certainly seen community support for it. What do we think?
I make a motion, we approve the Arrowwood budget project. Or we recommend,
Funding.
Sending it to town
We
meeting.
recommend to
recommend
town
town
meeting that it be funded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will recommend to town meeting that the Arrowwood Playground project be funded. Thank you for all your work on that.
A long time, right?
It's not done yet, but the next step is
Town meeting.
on to town meeting.
Town meeting.
Town meeting.
All right, so then the next is the Prospect Park accessibility improvements for $143,000. Is there more discussion? Is there anything else that we haven't learned about it? Are we ready to make a decision?
Yes.
And that would be?
I make a motion that we approve the Prospect Park accessibility improvements for funding and the article to go to town meeting.
Recommending.
Recommending. Recommending.
There is a
Second.
motion to recommend funding for the Prospect Park accessibility improvement project to go to town meeting for $143,000. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes. Will also be recommended to town meeting. So then the final one is Jordan Pond, the $53,000 for a representing a 20% match to a Mass Trails application. Are there any other questions that we have about that project? Any more comment or discussion?
Well, I have a comment well, it seems like John kind of answered it, right, or asked it during the eligibility that, in the end, it's a $2 million project and we're looking at, CPC potentially funding $400K of that. This first phase is just a design phase. My only comment is that, and it's tough. It's tough for us with designs, right? We do designs, and sometimes designs work out, and we fund the project. And other times, we do a design and we don't. Well, somehow the project doesn't happen, right? The Prospect Park pergola is a perfect example. But it seems like I just want us to be cognizant of projects like this with design, that there's appetite to go forward for the full amount, right? I guess we should kind of look ahead, right? And to see whether we're willing to fund the whole $400K at some point, right? And this is just like a stepping stone. That's all.
Good point. Yes.
I appreciate your comments about that. I think that improvement of trail systems in Shrewsbury has been listed as one of our priorities in the community preservation plan. And I think just commenting on all the projects we've talked about to date, we've recommended to move forward. They all fit along with our goals.
Oh, yeah, I voted for
I'm-
eligibility.
Yeah.
Right. I just, left
Speaking
my
more to
comments
the,
till funding.
To the camera.
Oh, sorry.
So I know you know.
Yeah,
But all these projects have been lining up with,
Oh, yeah.
to date, with the plan.
Absolutely.
And so I certainly take comfort in voting to recommend these projects and looking ahead
Yeah, yeah.
at a larger ticket. Yeah, I agree with you that, you're going to begin to see the next thing.
Right. And, it's nice that John brought up kind of reinforce the fact that, we're potentially looking at $400K at some point, right, in pieces.
Yes.
Right? So that's all. I mean, it's one thing to say yes to $53K, but really, we're almost giving not giving approval, but we're saying we're not opposing 400K at some point, at this point.
Right.
We might in the future, say no to the remaining $350,000, but at this point, we're not. Because,
Yes.
like, does it matter, what, are we guaranteed we're gonna get the Trails grant?
No.
So if we don't get the Trails grant, the money just comes back to us.
Correct. At that point, we would probably send notice that we weren't a lot of the mass trails, and we could work with the committee if we hold those funds for the year to reapply. And I think that would be my preference to show that we have those funds committed, and that 20% match. That may strengthen our
Okay.
application mass trails. But if we're not using them, we'll certainly return them and
if
look for
we
other
can
funding opportunities.
Approve recommendation of that funding as the match. So if the grant doesn't happen, the match doesn't happen.
Yeah.
May I make one last comment? This is more than just a trail. This is an all-access trail, which is going to be fairly novel in Shrewsbury, to have that length and that scenic and that charming a trail that will be accessible to people with wheelchairs, baby strollers, you name it. And I think it's going to be really, really heavily used and very, very much liked. So I think it's going to be a real gem. Just saying.
Yeah, no, we might have another storyboard,
Oh, yeah.
walk on it too, right?
John?
Yeah,
Possibilities.
I guess, from looking at the total cost, the $2 million cost, the 260 that we came up with right now is just a 20% number based on the other costs. So when we put that out, I assume it'll get put out to bid. So potentially, it may not cost 260 to do the design work. There's really no logic behind the 260 other than somebody estimated the cost of doing the work at about $1.2 million. And then they took that and said 20% of it should be designed. That's, if you look at the spreadsheet we got, it's just a 20% number. So there's no logic behind how we came up with 20%, other than it's 20% of some other number. So potentially, it may not cost $260,000 to design what we're gonna put out the bid. So, just another point of information there.
What else? Any other thoughts, questions? Gail?
Well, just that I think this area is an underutilized part of Shrewsbury, and even looking forward to if it was 400 or 500, or whatever it ends up being, I think it does fit in with our goals of CPA, and it's money well spent. To me, that number doesn't seem like enough, to do the project. So I'm anticipating that it might come in more as we go further down, but I think it's money well spent, and the town it's a natural resource that's underutilized, so it really is a shame that it's just sitting there. After all the years of all those past years of people enjoying that pond, and now for so many years they haven't been able to enjoy it like they should. I think it's time that we invest in making that area usable and enjoyable for the residents.
Thank you. Any other comments? You ready to make a motion?
I make a motion to recommend. I make a motion that we recommend that the warrant article be published for the Jordan Pond Mass Trails application match of $53,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will recommend that to town meeting as well. Next on our agenda is to recommend our draft warrant articles to the select board. I think third time's the charm. We'll get them right the first time this year.
I think so. We did write these, again, in our format where they do not include the actual funding amount to allow for adjustments and also which accounts they're being pulled off of. Again, in the budget item, we do kind of show that, and as we get closer to town meeting, we'll be proposing motions as well, which will specify that. Those can be amended on town meeting floor if needed. So it just provides us that flexibility. With that, we have draft warrant language that was provided for each of, all right, just trying to find my folder. For each of those articles, it includes the annual appropriation for the budget based on those figures that we discussed, as well as the projects that were discussed and just voted on for their funding applications. So we think that these are substantially complete. They've been reviewed by town manager's office and found to be appropriate. So these would be referred to select board, and select board would have final say in any amendments that are required. But I think that they're pretty sufficient at this stage.
Everyone have a copy or access to see these? All right,
Hold them
we'll
up.
take them one at a time. The first is our annual appropriations, our budget. Are there any questions or comments in regards to that? You can see there lists our local CPA tax surcharge receipts projected, the state matching funds, which currently are projected at only 15%. Total revenues of $1,088,015. And then our appropriations are our standard ones, 5% for administrative expenses, reserves of 10% for historic resources, 10% for community housing, 10% for open space and recreation, and the remaining for our budgeted reserve. Are there any questions, comments, corrections?
The only question I got is, obviously, on the revenue side, those numbers potentially could change by the time we get to town meeting.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So is there a motion to approve the recommended article on our annual appropriations as written and presented in front of us?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the draft warrant article as presented for our annual appropriation?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. The next article is for the Arrowwood Park. Should this say Arrowwood Playground instead of Arrowwood Park? Which are we supposed to be referring to that as? What do we
It
think?
makes a difference. I mean, there is more space than the playground. So it's probably, we would say Dean Park as opposed to Dean Playground. I guess if we did something for Dean Park.
Well,
I mean, I get no problem leaving with Arrowwood Park.
and Arrowwood Park makes sense for the price tag as well, that it's more than, as you said, it's more than just a piece of play equipment. That makes sense.
Are we voting on these because they're kind of generic and the numbers are not in them or anything like that? I mean, are we gonna have to re-vote on them again to go to the town meeting when you have the final document?
No, so these would be, so these are just the warrant articles in that format that's suggested. The motions themselves will contain that
Yeah,
information.
you're right. I thought of that after I said it.
Yep.
Your mouth is faster than your brain.
Is there consensus that it should be Arrowwood Park Playground or just Arrowwood Park?
I think Arrowwood
Playground.
Park Playground.
Playground.
because
I think so
I
too.
remember Kevin Esposito saying that we can build a park or we can build a playground, and the park is more.
All right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to imply that we're doing anything more than a playground, even though it's a nice playground. But, you know, all the landscaping, all the,
Yeah.
the trees, all that, that isn't going to be really part of that, so
I agree.
I think you have to have playground in there.
Agreed
Agreed.
Yeah.
as well, yeah.
Okay. Are we comfortable with the language as is there? If everybody can see it, I won't bother reading it to you. It's replacing existing outdated playground equipment and install, should be installing if we're gonna have our verbs match. New safety surfacing. Are we comfortable with that as
Oh, it just says we're installing a new safety surface. It doesn't say anything about playground equipment? No,
It's
replacing
replacing the existing
Playground.
Okay,
outdated
Yeah.
playground
That's
equipment
got it.
and installing new safety surfacing.
okay.
Do you have a question? And maybe it's my memory's not maybe getting this right. The timeline in terms of this being 2 years out. Were we doing 2? I thought we were doing 3 previously.
I think we've generally done 2. We may have done 1 or more projects at 3 by
Okay.
their request, but it's really up to us,
Oh, okay.
however we want to set that timeline.
Nothing 2. All right, never mind. Just wanted to kind of remember, refresh my memory on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't remember which, there was one of them that asked for a 3-year timeframe. Yeah.
Okay.
The question I have is, once we approve these articles at the May town meeting, do we have to wait? I know in the past, we've waited until July 1st to put the bids out in some cases. Can we put the bids out like a day after the town meeting theoretically?
We could theoretically, so we've typically, the funding agreements that we write up and then review and sign, we've typically backdated those effective to the actual town meeting vote, because that's the appropriation of the funds. So we've generally done that where, we don't have that final funding agreement in place, but we can cover any of those expenditures that happen while.
Yeah, but I mean, the actual bid that goes out and say, like take the basketball, we waited until after July 1st to put the bid out, and by that time, all the contractors had all their contracts set up, so nobody bid on the thing for a fall install. We had to go to next year.
I see, yeah, so the bidding process wouldn't accrue any expenses, so we could have those bids set up to be issued
Get out,
upon town meeting.
by
Yep.
June, let's say, yeah.
Yep.
To get them, if you wanted to get them done this year, as opposed to waiting till next year, that's all.
It's good note.
So are there any other edits to the article regarding Airwood?
Yes, Erwin. I feel like when I read it over and over again, I'm reading it, replacing the existing outdated playground equipment and installing new, it should say new equipment and safety surfacing and fencing around Airwood Park playground. Because then when you read it, it just sounds like we're just installing new safety surfacing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It just sounds like we're just they're taking out one thing, like the old equipment, the old surfacing, and then they're gonna give us new surfacing. It doesn't sound like, I feel like people are really specific, and then they'd be like, oh, well, I thought we were getting a playground. And I feel like people would just say equipment and safety surfacing, but I know there's a lot of parents out there with children with disabilities. Oh. Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah,
Hi, Al.
there's one on the table there. You
Oh,
can sit at the
sorry,
table.
sorry,
Wherever you-
I was just thinking, because of what a lot of our community is looking for too, I just want to make sure that I know that people have been going to the meetings. I think multiple times there's always an adult asking if there's going to be a fence around the playground. So replacing existing outdated playground and equipment and installing new equipment and safety surfacing, surfacing, along with the fencing around Arrowwood Park and playground. That's what I feel like it needs to be a little bit more specific. New equipment, safety surfacing, and an encircled fencing around Arrowwood Park Playground. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same fencing is sufficient.
Yeah, that's like a really important thing that none of the playgrounds have, except for Dean, but like none of like other public playgrounds that are like besides Dean Park have encircled fencing, which is really important for our kids with special needs or little ones. So that was like an important detail.
Yep.
Okay.
Kathy?
Thanks.
Do we put in ADA compliant equipment or ADA?
If that's
I
what we're
think so.
installing, it should,
That was just.
Yeah.
that
Should be in there.
Yeah.
If you want to replace installing new and say installing ADA approved new equipment and safety surfacing. If you want to make it.
So I think I can feel.
You go first.
Sorry. And whatever.
So the language here is not really intended to be an itinerary of what is happening with the project. It's rather an emotion that town meeting will to move forward on appropriation. So
Okay.
the
There-
motion will have more detail and explanation.
Yes.
Remember
Okay.
in the warrant,
Yeah.
when you're at town meeting, there's the little bit, and then the italics part underneath explains more what it is.
Okay. Perfect.
So we could capture the rest of that in the motion.
yes. yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Let me, I guess,
you.
Oh, do you want? I'll stay.
well, just to explain the warrant article as he talked about it, and why I said I corrected myself. The motion is what goes to the town meeting. If everybody knows, the selectmen approve a warrant, and that's what we're talking about here. It's very generic, because even the $150 million budget, when you read the warrant article, all it says something is we're gonna approve a budget. This would be what goes to the selectmen to approve the town warrant. Then the motions are developed behind that for the town meeting, which would then get into more specific detail,
Okay.
I guess. The motions will be entirely different.
There's also a presentation that goes on at town meeting as well. So there are a lot more details, color pictures, many, many things.
Is Kevin going to be presenting that part, like, with he'll have everything, and Mariana will be there, and assuming for all those questions. Okay.
If we work with Chris in his office to create I think last time we've gotten better every time. We had pictures of the projects, and we had a PowerPoint presentation as well that explained what the project was. And we'll be prepared with the application and all of that to answer questions.
Okay.
Yes, to John's point, the warrant article is the generic part, the legal part of it, if you will, and the motion will explain in greater detail, and there'll be a brief presentation as well.
Okay. I just want to make sure that every adult person that reads it, that kind of gets the gist of like.
In the printed warrant, that'll have the warrant article, and then the motion will explain more.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
So let's keep it complete but simple. So,
So question.
yes.
Chris, the way it reads now, is this sufficient or okay to move forward? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's keep it simple
Yeah.
and sufficient. Do we feel that it is there with these edits?
Yes.
All right, then is there a motion to approve this draft warrant article as presented right now?
I make a motion, we approved the Arrowwood Park article as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. The next warrant article is for the ledger restoration.
Sorry, question.
Yes.
Arrowwood, one W, the two Ws?
Two.
All right,
Two
so
Ws.
just a correction on the article title there.
Catch. It does look ridiculous. 2 R's, 2 W's.
Noticed
The kids in that neighborhood better at spelling or worse at spelling than other kids in Shrewsbury?
Words put together.
All right, the ledger restoration. Any changes, edits, questions? And is there a motion to approve the warrant, suggested warrant article as presented?
Actually, 1 second, please. 1 second, please.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I make a motion, we approve the article for ledger restoration as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any opposed? Do you guys need one more second? I see furrowed brows.
Go ahead.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes. Next is the Prospect Park accessibility. Any discussion, questions, corrections?
I'll make a
Ready to
motion.
make a motion?
We approve the Prospect Park ADA accessibility. I make a motion, we approve the warrant article for the Prospect Park ADA accessibility as presented.
Second.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes. And then finally, the warrant article regarding the Jordan Pond does say a sum of money for the purpose of providing the 20% local match for Mass Trails Grant. So it does say it is for a match. Any
Do we need the word
questions,
current in here?
edits?
Do we need the word current? It says to develop the current schematic design. Shouldn't we just say to develop the schematic design?
So we currently have a schematic design. This will bring that schematic design through to the construction level drawings. So,
Oh, okay. Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion to approve this?
I make a motion to recommend the draft warrant article regarding Jordan Pond Mass Trails application match.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes. Great. Next, our discussion items. Next,
Excuse me, I'm gonna get some water.
right ahead.
Don't close that
We can't have
topic.
our vice chair keel over on us. We have scheduled for our next month's meeting to be our annual community input session. We had planned to start next month's meeting at 6:30 in the evening rather than 7, and invite the public to come and tell us what they think, what their priorities are, what they think we should be paying attention to. In the past, we've done that with, part Jason wants to talk about. Jason has done a lovely presentation about what CPA is. I feel like every year that could and should get a little bit shorter.
As we all know more.
Get a new presenter. That'll go shorter.
Hope.
Yes. Answer is yes. They can go shorter.
But what we should also be doing is make sure we're highlighting what we have already done with CPA funds. If there's new photos that we could put together, or at least a nice looking and thorough list of, since its inception, Shrewsbury Community Preservation Commission has helped make X, Y, and Z happen. and share people what we have done, but then really it's to hear from the public. We've scheduled a half hour. I don't know if anyone will show up. Could you create for us something that we could share in our own social media to invite people to come? In the past, we sent out an invitation, a targeted invitation list. So I know I sent it to youth sports leagues and others who were eligible. None of them showed up or sent a comment, but they were invited. Are there any thoughts about what we can do to improve it or be sure we include?
I think just ensuring that all the official channels are touched upon, right? So all the on Twitter, Facebook page, of the accounts, both the CPC's account and if it could get through the select board, that would be great if they wouldn't mind sharing it through there. I don't know if that touches upon the town manager's announcements or just whatever higher visibility to get a greater cross-section of the population. The other part to that is in terms of the presentation. So I posted it to the Drive, the 2024 version of it. I think the portion that took, and it was an angle that we did that I feel may have taken too much time, which is I went over a section of like, these are the projects that we've done, and then here's the ones that we're proposing for next year. So I don't know if the proposals are really valuable in this presentation. I'd say, what is CPA, what can it do? Because are we there at that point selling what is coming for FY20, what the new fiscal year, to an audience that's just coming brand new to CPA? I don't know if that's so much value add. That could be, that's an area where we can cut time and just say, hey, here's some ideas how we have used CPA.
Now that we have a couple of years under our belt of something to show for it, I think that makes some sense.
With the exception of community housing. So that one we have to still rely on examples of what it could fund, we haven't funded.
Already.
So
Yeah.
I think just from an assignment perspective, I'm willing, with your permission, to draft that, take the one that I currently have and just update it for FY25.
That'd be great, thank you.
And then share with you directly, and then see what you think. Okay?
That would be terrific, thank you.
And in case I'm hit by the bus, or almost hit by a car
Please don't.
today, and the Drive is last year's, both the zip file, which is the original PPT, and then PDF version. Okay.
Yeah, my suggestion is that the thing that Taylor, I'm not sure, Taylor's, Gusher, is it? What is it?
Lucia.
Oh, sure.
She sends out this Stay Connected Shrewsbury or something that I don't know who gets
Yeah.
that, but if we could feature ourselves in that somehow.
Yeah, so what I'll do, in the folder for these on the Drive, I did create a new 2025 forum kind of on the Drive. In that, there's previous docs to be updated, which includes we have a flyer and the social media post, as well as we've kept bringing over the instructions for social media posting, which gives some ideas of how to spread it. But what we'll do is we'll coordinate these efforts with Taylor Galusha, who's the communications coordinator, and I know that she's able to get these out to everyone. We can look at certainly the CPC accounts, the town accounts. I can't commit to it, but I'll see if they'll push it out to the town meeting member list as well. I know they try to not overload them with communications, but this might be one that's relevant.
If we have a flyer that's a JPEG, there is a town meeting member Facebook page that's not an official town sanctioned one, but that could be posted there.
Yeah, so we won't post on any non-official ones, but we'll give you those materials, and if you guys can do that, happy to.
Now, the Trails Committee has an email list that we've had for years. It's probably got close to 400 people on it now. And they're all very public spirited and, you know,
If
forward-looking.
you can give us something, we can push it out through things like
Yeah.
that. And there's a number of groups on social media, Shrewsbury Moms. There's more than one community forum, community page. Certainly we could drop it on all of those. So it's not political, it's an invitation.
I just had a little tidbit. So if you have other forums, like.
She's gotta come out of that room and ask you to
comment
come
on
here.
your- Oh, sorry. So if you have other groups like comment on your flyer, that's how it boosts. So like if the Shrewsbury Police likes it, or they comment on it, or like the Shrewsbury Moms like comment on it, and that's how like your thing pops up more and more. But instead of like you kind of like sharing it with them, it kind of stays stagnant. So you have to have an idea of like how to boost your posts to like be seen by a wide variety of different people. So that's kind of how it like works. So it like comes up on your feed at the top. So I don't know. You probably already knew that, but just a little inside.
Inside baseball.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll do that.
One more?
Yes.
Also, I know the select board also makes announcements of community events. I don't know if that could just be, say, hey, can you make a comment on that? This is happening. But I do have a question. I apologize because I stepped out of the room to get water. So is the public forum at 6:30 or 7 o'clock?
It's 6:30.
Okay. So the legal notice at 6:30, okay. The flyers, the draft flyers in the drive right now say April 7th, but it's 7 o'clock.
Those are the old ones, so we'll update those with the details for.
Okay. We happened to have it on April 7th last time? Maybe.
April 3rd last time.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
I
April
read it
3rd.
wrong. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
I just want, as part of the CPC, just getting what we've done out there more, right? I just wondered about getting things into the community advocate. Not so much online, because not everyone's online, but, Camp Wanigan, right? Or the Dean Park basketball courts, or, right? I mean, how do we get these happenings, these new openings, these new things into something like the community advocate?
Probably time to talk to one of the reporters and say
Ver-
that there's
vers-
something going on in town.
Versus
that
paying
they should
for it,
talk about.
versus paying for it, right?
That's
I
the
know, that's
legal
the have to,
notice that we
yeah,
have
no, I
to
understand
pay
that, I understand
for.
that.
But yeah, talking to a reporter, it's free.
Yeah,
It should be.
yeah.
Probably do that. What else? Anything else we want to include, or we'll just be ready to ask our neighbors, friends, and other community members, what do they think? That should last for approximately a half an hour, and obviously if there's more people, we won't shut them down, but we'll schedule about a half hour for that, and then we'll go into our regular April meeting, which should be a fairly light agenda. Yes.
I don't know, maybe under next steps, I don't know. There was a question at when we had the open meeting for just Arrowwood Park. We had a number of people come online, right? And there was a question of whether this meeting would be in a Zoom meeting. Now, I don't know, I just bring it up as to, is that something we could do? We could add a CPC Zoom meeting, add this as a Zoom meeting out there to the public versus having them come here? Just a thought.
I mean, I have personal opinions, but a part of that is I'm hard of hearing. So when someone is on the screen, I have a lot of trouble hearing them. But that's me. So as we look into closed captioning for people like me.
Well, we could add recording with transcription that happens on the side, but yes.
And do we get a sense that there are people who would like to participate in any of the meetings are televised so that people can watch.
Right.
But if we generally don't hesitate to recognize the public, whether it's officially a public hearing or not. We're pretty open to that. But
Right,
do you
I
think
mean-
we would be inviting people to participate every month?
Well, I'm just wondering about just participation with the public and everything else, people just could join the meeting. You could mute them all until it was, they could raise their hand for a question or put something in chat as a question and you respond to it. It's just a way of getting more engagement with the public.
But would we have to advertise every one of those meetings as a public hearing?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. What do you think?
I think that for the community participation plan update, which is this April meeting, if there's gonna be a meeting that is open like that, it should be at that meeting.
Yeah.
And all the other ones are regular meetings where we participate here in
That makes
in the room.
sense.
If it's feasible to do in the time. to
I'm
prepare
just
for
bringing up ideas,
Yeah.
right?
that. Yeah. I mean, that does give the maximum opportunity, either come in person or join online
Yeah.
to participate during that session where we're open for comments. With that, if we do that, for certain, I think that, I don't think 30 minutes is enough for that, because, I'll probably go 20 minutes. And, and one person talking about, we need X, Y, Z in our community. can
Probably
go
should
5, 10.
limit public comment to 5-ish minutes per person, only because it would be terribly unfair if someone came and had a 2-hour presentation and there were other folks waiting. And I would hate to have to interrupt, I don't think anybody would do that, but I'd hate to interrupt them and say, there's 7 other people, please stop,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
We'll put you on an agenda another time.
That would have been my comment. I don't know if a half an hour on open meeting is enough.
We can certainly go longer.
I think you need to. Well, prepare for it, let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
Prepare for it to be longer. I recall correctly last time, we didn't have as many people as we'd hoped.
Yeah, but sometimes people look and say, oh, it's only a half an hour, I probably won't get my 2 cents in, so I'm not gonna show up.
Good point. Yep,
Thank you.
good point. So we can adjust that to, we can schedule that hour, so 6:30 to 7:30, and we can stop sooner. Or are we obligated if we schedule it for, 39 minutes? Are we obligated to go for 39 minutes if we have absolutely no one? And Jason tries to talk for the whole 39 minutes.
So we could always go longer, and we can start like the regular meeting later. If we schedule an hour, and then set the meeting to start at 7:30, we could be done within half an hour, and we would have to wait half an hour to open the meeting.
So we'll
it
go
goes
ahead
as
with-
advertised.
We're scheduling in a half hour, and certainly we're not going to stop if there are still people that wish to speak. That makes sense.
So is this billed as 2 separate meetings? Like, when you talk about SMC, like, we're seeing, like, what meeting we're at? Are we 2 meetings or 1 meeting?
So it's traditionally been one meeting. We run it all, through just normally.
Yep.
We just schedule the first half hour to be the public hearing.
Okay.
That's typically how we've done it, so.
Got it, thanks.
All right. Anything else in regards to that? That will be our next scheduled meeting in April. How is next month April already? The next item is our preliminary budget and budget forecast. Have we covered that thoroughly? Is there more to share with us?
Yeah, so there's a couple other items I wanted to touch on. So we did provide the preliminary budget, but a couple other efforts related to some of the discussion pieces that have come up from committee members looking for more regular updates as to the budget amounts and actual amounts in in each of the reserve accounts. Part of what town manager's office is doing is developing formal quarterly reports. And so we're going to look to tag along with that process rather than reinvent it. And we will take the quarterly reports that the town manager's office develops, may do some reformatting to make it more CPC specific, but we'll use their figures, put it in a format, so we'll be generating quarterly reports for CPC with the actual budget amounts, committed funds versus what's in the actual account. So we're still working on what that format will look like, and hopefully, I think we could have at least December's, so the previous quarters, format and quarterly report to the committee as early as the April meeting. So I don't want to commit to it. It's still some moving pieces, but we are targeting that for providing that information to you, and then we'll provide it on a quarterly basis thereon. Related to that, we're also looking at restructuring some of the website, which includes the project pages. I think speaks to the point that was raised earlier about kind of having a snapshot of where projects are. So we're going to be looking at developing one-pagers that will go with those quarterly reports on each of the active projects to give those status updates, funds that have been expended, and where they are. And we can include projects that are going through our eligibility phase and funding phase, just to give a brief one-pager. So not a full formal amount, but or a formal snapshot of the project, but something that at a quick glance we can get a flavor for. And that'll combine with efforts like providing information to town meeting members and things like that as well. So we think that'll be useful in multiple areas. So.
Thank you.
If I have some suggestions for a schedule format, should I send them to Emma then? Was she the one, she?
Yeah, so the quarterly reports, so we're gonna follow the town manager's quarterly schedule. So they have that set out. I don't have the exact dates. So the first one was December of last year, and then I believe it was, I think it was March, and quarterly thereon, I think is the one. But I'll get those actual dates.
Well, I'm not sure I understand. What his format is, I mean, we should have a format specific to us, basically, in terms of project approvals, spends, leftover, something like that, as opposed to, I don't know what his format is.
Sorry, I see. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So, and that's where, we haven't seen that either, and so that's why I want to see what their format looks like. We may just adopt it outright, but I think we'll probably want to do some restructuring. So we'll be using their figures. We're not developing the numbers ourselves, but we'll put that in a package in a way that fits for this committee. So yeah, so if they have suggestions, send them to Emma or myself, and we'll incorporate that. Yep.
Will do.
Yes.
I have something on budget. I'm still struggling with this, how we pay for things. And I'm curious if other people on the commission, on the committee here have the same concerns, but I'm wondering if we could have either a special meeting or designate a meeting, one of our meetings solely on funding and ways of funding, and perhaps even like Grafton the coalition had an event in Grafton to explain that maybe we could invite other communities to just talk about how projects get funded, the bonding process, or how much you should keep in your reserves, or just strategize a little bit about. I can see projects coming forward, big ticket number of projects, and how are we going to, we're going to be strapped because we're not going to know how to go about funding those. So if we educate ourselves on the methods of funding, perhaps then we can streamline the process a little bit and say, oh yeah, that's a good project to do this way, or that's a good project we could do this way. I think we've got a couple of years under our belt, and we've had some projects and successes. So now moving forward, there's going to be more playgrounds. There's going to be community housing projects coming forward. So I think at least I need some education on how to go about it. And I think perhaps having the coalition help us out on that might be a way to do it, unless somebody like Jason knows how to do it.
Is that ever a workshop that the coalition offers?
I don't know if it's a formal workshop. I'm happy to reach out and ask. I think we'll have better luck getting them to come to a meeting and speak to the board as a whole, so I can see if that's something that they're willing to do. We certainly can reach out to nearby communities and invite them to have a workshop that way as well.
I think that'd be very helpful to all of
You know,
us.
there's a lot of, even Northborough, for instance, has funded large projects, so, you know, even reaching out to other communities that have done this in the past and have had success with big projects could be a resource for us. Maybe we need to communicate a little bit more with other communities that have CPA that have gone through the same growing pains, you know, and have already succeeded. Just a thought.
It's a good one. Definitely worth asking if the coalition would be willing to do something like that, and if they weren't, let's get creative and see what we can find
Yeah,
out.
right.
So a question to that, I mean, are you looking to understand technically how it's done, or just generating ideas of what could be done?
Both, I suppose, but let's say we had a multi-million-dollar project come before us. How would we approach that? I mean, I don't have the financial wisdom to know what's available. You know, do you take out loans? Do you do the bond? Do you do, you know, you do whatever?
Ma'am,
May I comment here? We have an excellent town manager who's very good with budgets. Seriously, he is. And I think we can rely on his guidance in a lot of this. If we ever had to bond anything out, I think he'd be, you know, the first one to talk to.
But there
Is
is
that crazy?
information.
Or what's permittable through the CPA? You know, are
It's
there certain
something on the
restrictions that you
coalition
can only do?
website under technical assistance. There is a tab about that. I have not looked at it
Okay, yeah.
recently, but I do recall in a workshop, they had said that was a good place to start.
Yeah, no, that'd be a good place for us to start, then just take a look at that.
yeah, so there is a bonding 101,
Okay,
CPA bonding 101. And if it's eligible for CPA funding, then it's eligible for CPA bonding. But bonding has to have multiple parties involved.
Right.
Manager, select board, right, because you're committing CPA future monies to this legal obligation, et cetera, et cetera. So it would not be
no,
us
no,
nine.
no, absolutely.
And Chris,
See,
and that's it,
That's what I
right?
mean, maybe,
It would be a
you know,
lot
to
more.
get everybody on board that, okay, this, you know, this is, in the future, this is a possibility, so they need to be on board as well, that this is a possibility that we might be bringing to them, that, okay, we want this project, but it's gonna take the whole
Yeah.
organization.
I think let's, other than spending money we have, in my mind, the only other alternative is some type of a bond issue. And that would have to go through, in my mind, pretty much the same process. We approve it, you know, the selectman puts it on the warrant, the selectmen have to approve it, the town manager has to approve it, and then town meeting has to approve it. Now, the only thing I don't know is on a bonding issue, would the actual voters, would it have to be voted on at a town election?
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I think like the override had to be had to be voted on at an election, as opposed to when we do a bonding for a school, I'm sure that has to be voted on by the town. Either way, that would be the final, you know, the voting. Now, in terms of the commitment is, in a sense, we, the CPC, would make the commitment to pay that bill over 10 years.
Right.
But if we ceased to exist, that's why you would have to either go to the selectmen or probably to an election town meeting, town election voting, because the town is actually signing up to be our backstop. They're like co-signing the thing to say, if for some reason we don't pay the bill, they will.
Yeah.
They have, that's the only way it would get through. Because even, one more point, even when Selco puts out a bond issue, the town is still responsible for that. Even though Selco's kind of out there by themselves, they still come under the town umbrella in terms of where we will guarantee that bond to be paid as a town.
So in chapter 44B, there is a section there about dissolution of CPA if your town does vote to remove CPA, and just to clarify, no one is talking about that, there's nothing on the table, so
Yeah.
it's just a technical conversation to answer your question. CPA will continue to be collected upon until the bond is paid off, even though you just cannot appropriate new
Yeah.
new projects. You have to finish up your existing
Right.
obligations. So, well, anyway, it was all academic conversation. I think we go back to, my question here is that on the budget, will FY '24 budget be an actual column when we get to town meeting?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Okay. That good for budget for now? Then the next item is that our May meeting has, we've had to move it to May 12th. And it will be in this room again, correct? Or do we?
Let me just double check.
I believe it's in the police station.
Yes, we were booking the police station for that, so.
Yeah.
This room will- Sorry, this room will not be available, so.
All right, and the next steps, looking ahead, next month is our annual listening session. We also will need to begin to look at any updates that we may have to our annual plan. If folks have an opportunity to look at it, if you think there's a part, especially those of you representing another board, if there are things that you know, priorities that you'd like to see changed, wording that you think could be better, and we need to start there's certain boards we have to go to so they can tell us what they think as well. We need to start scheduling that.
So individual committee members now, like, the representative should be going now to
Yep.
and getting them. That's on your own schedule
Yep.
right now to come back, because we want to hear all the inputs no later than June, right, to be able to close it out. And the select board is not represented here, but that's one that needs to be just communicated directly. So the requirements are the 5 statutory plus select board. So I think that's an action item.
Yep.
You and Chris. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we typically have that, the heat map kind of matrix that we send out, so we'll provide that to each of the members here, just as a reminder for their boards, and we'll also put that on the agenda for any of the others that are not represented.
When you say send it out, you gonna send us an email?
I'll email it, yep.
All right, thank you, ladies. Yes.
Yes. Also, April gives us, if we're looking for things to put on the agenda to close out this fiscal year, it's also an opportunity to look at any changes we want to make to the application process effective for July 1st.
And
So
the
if there's-
application forms.
The forms, the process, anything relative to how people request money. This is the time to begin that process. So whether that's, if there's right around the corner, the new submission process, or if that is not happening, then we're back to the forms. But April should be the time to talk about that, to begin the conversation about that.
Kathy?
I have some suggestions, having completed them, but I'll wait till April.
Excellent. Let's start tackling that next month as well. Is there anything else? Yes?
Could we send past applicants a questionnaire as to how they would like to see the application process streamlined or changed? They're the ones, just like, I mean,
Oops, why
when I
not?
did it for
Maybe
the ledger, it was easy because it was a simple thing to do, but some of these more complicated ones, maybe, just a
Let's
thought.
see why we couldn't come up with a few questions, a survey monkey or something, send it to the past applicants and see what they think. I know we certainly had some technical difficulties in the beginning. Hopefully we can avoid that going forward. But anything else? Just like it noted, we had a very full agenda and we still finished. Well, unless anyone has something to fill the next 6 minutes, we're not making it.
But wait, I have more.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, thank you. That concludes our March 3rd meeting of the Community Preservation Commission.